Yeah, no, I haven't had sugar all week, and so today I just feel like I had some sugar, and now I'm like a crazy person. I don't know what it is. Um, like my brain still hasn't been working right and everything else, but that Bart's root beer hit the spot.
I can't do root beer. I always make fun of my nephew because he loves it. And like, that's disgusting.
I think my sugar levels had gotten so low, like, and not in a bad way, like,
Yeah.
clearly because I'm eating healthier right now. But like, I think my sugar levels had gotten to some point where when I saw the root beer in the vending machine, I just went, just like my brain just
It's like a
activated.
kid on
Like, that
Christmas.
thing has so much sugar, like, because I mean, there's more sugar in that than there is a Dr. Pepper. Like, like
Yeah.
it's like almost 2 days worth of your sugar allowance in one Bart's root beer. So like my brain was probably like doing backflips, like, oh my God,
Right.
yes, yes, yes. Which is why I sound like a crack addict when I'm talking to John Nabors today. And probably throughout the entire course of this show. Hi, welcome to Hoop Southbound Podcast. My name is David.
Hey guys, it's Maddie.
And yeah, that's right. I'm on crack. No, I'm sorry, sugar, the other white powder. Yeah, it's been fun. We just got done. As you'll hear in our interview, I can apparently not say goodbye to John Nabors. So
Gonna miss him so much
I'm
because
gonna
we
miss him
couldn't
so
let him
much.
go.
Sugar's a drug, folks, and cutting down on his the first time. Bart's root beer, baby. Bart's root beer. Let's talk about basketball, man.
Are you
Because
trying to get a sponsor or something, David?
you know what? If Bart's Root Beer wants to send me a bottle of root beer that I can proudly display on the tabletop in front of the bouncing basketballs in the background and everything, like, look at him go. Like, I'm good with that. Like, that would be my favorite sponsor of all time,
We'll
unless
hit him
it's
up on Twitter.
it's like Fossil Cove and brewery in Fayetteville or something like that, which is or Fat Tire Beer. I'll take that as a sponsor. I've got a whole list of people I'd love for sponsors. Maddie, your initial thoughts on this week of basketball or possible sponsors for this show?
Well, so this week, you know, as an Arkansas fan, it's pretty uplifting. I was glad I wasn't a fan of, say,
We'll get to
Texas
that.
A&M. Yeah,
Oh, well,
you
Texas
know.
A&M. Okay, I thought you were about to say a different school there, but yeah,
Oh, yeah, no. We'll refrain from that. Um,
go ahead.
really. I think I have, everything in our notes coming up. So off the top of my head,
Yeah, okay, so
it's
I'll
just,
jump
I mean,
on
it's
this.
kind of bouncing all over the place.
It's nice when you've been saying something for a while. And for me, like probably the entire course of this season, I've been saying this. And then you just wake up one morning in the middle of the week, and that person's gone a lot sooner than what you originally anticipated. Like Ole Miss firing Kermit Davis at this point in the season was wild to me. I don't think
Yeah.
there's only a handful of cases that I've seen coaches get fired before they're eliminated from the SEC tournament. And this is a mid-season, this is a during the season firing for Ole Miss. And what does it say the fact that they won a basketball game immediately without him, against LSU? I thought that was crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I think it helped that they played LSU,
Yeah, I think that did
but
help as well. LSU is not a good basketball team. Yeah. Did I show you my bets this week?
you did not show me your bets. How'd they go?
Let's just say if LSU would have won on Saturday, I would have won a lot of money. And so yeah, didn't particularly see that coming. I was hoping the lack of coach would would change that parlay just a little bit. But yeah. Wild week though overall. We saw some good games over as well throughout the week. And let's talk about the first thing that comes to mind, and that is Alabama. Alabama, of course, with their win against Arkansas and Texas A&M's loss to Mississippi State, are now officially at least going to be partial champions of the SEC regular season title. I'd have been good this year. This is pretty much coming down to another scenario very similar to Auburn last year when they were close to winning it and they came down to the last week of the season. It's like you either got to win one of the last two games. And that's where we're kind of at this time with the Tide. Of course, they have Auburn in Coleman for their first game, and then Texas A&M or in College Station after that. So they got 2 chances to do this. Auburn in game 1, I think they're going to get up for that game big time, because anytime Alabama has a chance to play Auburn, and now there's something on the line, I
Mhm.
think I think we'll see the Tide wrap this up on Wednesday.
Yeah, I think the weird thing about this game is if we're looking at this game based on the teams as they played throughout the year, uh, just any given day, it would be a close game because it's a rivalry and the talent based on both sides. But, Auburn's taken a rough turn, losing 7 of their last 10 games. And in the past 2 games, like, not to bash Arkansas by any means,
No.
or, South Carolina's not a fantastic team, but Alabama didn't look like the regular Alabama team. Could be due to outlying sources, but, is what it is. I think this is going to be a close game if Bama plays the way that they played last week, and Auburn brings their A game.
Yeah, for sure. And I do think that since they'll have something to really focus on this week, we'll probably see the best game we've seen out of Alabama probably in the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Before the Tennessee game. Like since before the Tennessee game, we'll probably see their best game come out, especially because it's senior night. In all honesty, like, I know they were celebrating their seniors on the Arkansas game, but Alabama, it'll be truly senior night. It'll be your last night in Coleman. It's the season finale there. It's time to wrap this thing up, and you can win this conference against your biggest rival in every sport. Like that to me just sums it up. And then Auburn, like we've said it several times, over the last couple of weeks, there's no bottom to how far they can fall given their circumstances at this point in the
Yeah.
season. They don't look like they're going to be able to get out of Coleman in better shape than what they get there. I don't think that's going to be a possibility. So personally, yeah, no, I like the Tide to just absolutely decimate Auburn. Just my feeling on the whole situation. Then, of course, if they shouldn't happen to win against Auburn, they do have that road trip to College Station. It's interesting, right? The SEC title
Yeah.
will either be won in Tuscaloosa, as right now it runs through Tuscaloosa, but if they lose to Auburn, it shifts back to College Station, and Texas A&M will have a chance to get partial title with Alabama. So it's interesting. It's definitely one. Now, I don't think Texas A&M has the ability to get the 1 seed anymore in the SEC tournament, but that game going to be super interesting because I'm sure Buzz would like to get one more win before the NCAA tournament, and especially a big resume boost. So that potentially, even if you beat Auburn, can turn into a trap game in College Station.
Yeah, I think so too. I think, especially with the loss against Mississippi State that Texas A&M took this week, they're going to be fighting. And, the fact that it is in College Station changes this ballpark, like changes this game so much. I think if they were going to Alabama, it wouldn't even be a question. Alabama's winning that basketball game after the week Texas A&M had.
Yeah.
But I think, at College Station with that crowd, Texas A&M is going to put up a huge fight.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting for sure. And that'll be one that, we'll see how much ramifications are left in that game. Because like I said, there could be not much. It could be a situation where it's all for Texas A&M and not much really for Bama. Coming into that game. So we'll just have to see and keep our eyes on that scenario. That's ever changing. Not exactly a game that you want to put a bet on a Monday just to get to Saturday and see the circumstances completely rearrange. Let's stay on Alabama. And this is so back in January, we did the story. We were talking about the situation with the murder that occurred in Tuscaloosa on the Strip. Of course, now we know that Brandon Miller had brought, and I know that is a language that, depending on who you ask, may not be the right verbiage to use to say that the gun arrived by some way of Brandon Miller bringing it to the Strip in Tuscaloosa. And I'm not trying to dance around that, because at the end of the day, what did occur was that Brandon Miller, knowingly or unknowingly, brought a gun to the Strip there in Tuscaloosa that was used in the murder of Jamea Harris. It's just an awful, god awful situation. We said it was an awful situation back when we first talked about it, when we got the news. And We talked about the fact like it's a senseless tragedy. Here's the actually the thing. It's not a tragedy, and it's devastating. It's horrible, but a tragedy is something that occurs, something like a tsunami hit when the tsunami hit Japan, or an earthquake hits Turkey and Syria. This is not a tragedy. This is senseless violence, and it's horrible beyond belief. And like I said, we talked about this about a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
Knowing the new details about Brandon Miller's involvement or lack of knowledge of involvement, however you spin that, right now, the way that Alabama has acted in the course of this, and I'm talking about Alabama as a program, it's concerning. I'm not going to sit here and say one way or the other, because I think Alabama has put themselves into a no-win situation with the way that they've handled this. Suspending Brandon Miller would do nothing at this point. It just really wouldn't. It doesn't even cast a better light in Alabama, because it would just be looked at as public pressure, even though that's probably the route they should have taken earlier if Nate Oates had known this information. And he says he did, so we'll see there. But at the end of the day, I'm trying to get the right words here. At the end of the day, like, Alabama's handled this so poorly that I think we've seen a cultural difference between some programs. And I'm not trying to use my own as one here, but I've seen this on other programs as well, between Alabama not saying that they're not going to do any kind of suspension until all the facts are out, and then universities who will put the suspension on as a precaution, or suspend the player before the details come out, because they are trying to protect the university. I don't know how to take that, but it's definitely odd that we've now seen that cultural difference in the SEC between different schools.
Yeah, for sure. I think, when you look at this situation as a whole, not to say that Brandon Miller is guilty of anything,
I'm not
because
saying
we
that. No,
we
I'm
don't
not
know
going to say that.
anything at all. It's just one of those situations where he is a young man, 20, right?
Yeah, 20 years old.
Who is involved in all this. If something has happened, what is that going to lead him to believe in the future as to like what he can get away with? Has been my main thing with this situation, and I might get a lot of backlash from saying that, but it's one of those things, like, if there's not anything done about it now, what's going to happen in the future?
Well, my thing is not necessarily a legal issue at this point.
Yeah, for sure. That's me as well. It's more
It's a
morality.
morality. It's a
Yeah.
morality issue, and the morality issue is, what did Brandon Miller do right that night? Like, really ask yourself that, because when someone asks you, a lot of what is defense attorneys saying and what people have said is, and they're carrying that around like it's the gospel. And I'll tell you right now, if my boss took everything a defense attorney said as fact, we wouldn't have jobs. That's just from where I sit, and that's not a legal statement. That's reality. But the fact is that they're saying that Brandon Miller didn't know that the gun, he was there to pick up Darius Miles on a ride. Sure, that's acceptable, but wasn't there information about a gun? Like, if he had any known fact that that gun was in the backseat of his car, bringing that gun to a strip at 1:50 in the morning, or whatever time it was, in the middle of the night on a busy area, it's just a horrible judgment call, an absolutely horrible judgment call. And one in which, I don't know where your logic would take you next on that. Like, so that's one of my concerns. And then it should be an honor and a privilege to represent a university. It should be. I mean, like, part of so many like doctoral programs and other programs, when you go to a university, they ask things about your moral character. They also say, like, when I applied for law school, like, they have a statement on there that you have to be able to pass character and fitness in order to receive your degree down the road. So character and fitness is something that is not of the law. It is something in which you're going to represent this university for the rest of your life. in one way or the other, and you want it to fit. So those are my concerns. And like right now, I just, it doesn't fit, from a moral perspective on the conversation.
Yeah, for sure. Just really a disappointing situation all around, coming out of Alabama in terms of, they said they took it to the AD and then went to, was it the chancellor or the
Yeah.
dean?
And also, additionally, on that is that on the not the Ion College basketball podcast, the College Game Day podcast, Alabama's athletic director saying, "Oh, we learned stuff today," was kind of inconsistent compared to the stuff that Nate Oates had said earlier. That's that week about, oh yeah, we knew of this situation. So
Yeah.
like it was just kind of odd seeing that I guess things didn't get communicated down the chain of command like you would expect them to, or they just misspoke. I don't know. But very, very concerning. I'm gonna wrap this up because there's just a lot of things additionally. Oh, and I'm just gonna throw it out there
There's a
as
lot of rabbit holes we could go down with
there's
this.
there's so many rabbit holes because like we didn't even talk about the pat down situation for his walkout, which was one of the most incredibly tone deaf things I'd ever seen. And I don't care if he's been doing it all season. That
Yeah.
again, that's a judgment call situation. Like, you thought this was a good idea given the circumstances. Like this is where I'm going with this, is that like there's patterns of just lack of thought
Yep.
at times, it seems like. So anyway, as I said, I think Alabama's in a no-win situation at this point. Brandon Miller's not going to be suspended. That's just the reality of the situation. He probably should have been suspended earlier this season, but it's not going to happen now at this point. And that's not a question of legality. That's a question of morality. So that's where I'm going to wrap up the Brandon Miller. That's my piece on it. And I will say that earlier than this week, 2 weeks ago, my opinion of the way that Alabama operates as an athletic department is decreased. So that's currently where I'm at with them, and that's kind of heartbreaking because it's got just a absolutely senseless ordeal.
Yep. I think with the combination of that and then the way some fans were reacting,
I
it's gone
told you what
downhill
it
a little
reminded
bit.
me of. I told you what it reminded me of.
Yep.
But yeah, I won't delay down, the rest of this show talking about the horrible situation in that.
Yep.
I don't think any journalists have been threatened at this time. So that's something. Anyway, and if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about because you're a friend who knows what I'm talking about right now. Anyway,
Texas
Texas
A&M.
Texas A&M. Let's move on. Texas A&M. So you're telling me there's a chance? Yeah, that's a hard turn right there. Yeah, no. If Alabama does lose to Auburn on Wednesday, Texas A&M has a chance to claim partial title to the SEC championship, something they haven't done since 2016, which would be remarkable given the fact they haven't been in this conference, but maybe 10 years at this point. That'd be an outstanding accomplishment for your second SEC title. Texas A&M kind of let us down a little bit in that Mississippi State game, and that's the game that kind of gave Alabama the front door to get into that Auburn game. So,
Yeah, I mean
how'd you feel about the Aggies this week?
they beat Tennessee to improve to a 6-game win streak. But they had that tough loss in Humphrey to Mississippi State. I mean, if you look at it, the last 14 minutes, Mississippi State outscored Texas A&M 34-18, and that's just not something that you can do if you're in the running for an SEC title, co-title.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was just not a great way to start closing out the season.
It made for an anticlimactic event in this story, about like underdog Texas A&M having a chance to win the SEC title, and they just kind of blow it on Saturday because they're like, yeah, we got Mississippi State, which Mississippi State's playing to get into the NCAA tournament, and I don't think Texas A&M fell asleep in this game. They just went on like a 10-minute drought in that basketball game, and it kind of messed up their plans for Saturday. Because the ironic thing is they probably don't have that 10-minute drought. There's probably a SEC title matchup being played in College Station this week. So it's kind of disappointing.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, because now A&M needs Alabama to lose both games. to be co-title holders. So, unless God is 100% on Texas A&M side.
They're going to need a divine miracle on this
Yeah,
point.
exactly.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. It's not exactly the scenario in which you just kind of hope for, because like it's just it's the worst. But they do have some, easy games, or they have an easy game
An easy game, a
before they
bounce back
play
game.
Alabama. Yeah, so they got Ole Miss on Tuesday. So if they beat Ole Miss, they're just now watching that Alabama Auburn game with a little bit of intrigue. Look, Kermit Davis-less Ole Miss team, they kind of surprised us, I guess you'd say, against LSU. I don't think they're going to surprise us against Texas A&M. But you could get your tickets as low as $2 right now in Oxford, Mississippi to go watch that one. Again,
I don't know if it's because they are Kermitless or not. Matt Morrell's back, and
that helps a lot.
He played well against that LSU team, so that could be a threat that Texas A&M needs to watch that they didn't think they were going to have to.
Yeah, no, Matt Morrell being back is someone who adds 14.6 points per game. He's also, almost an 85% shooter from the free throw line. I know you love that, Maddie. But yeah, he's a great basketball player. So he's definitely a big piece to helping you get some wins, maybe. So if you want to make an upset bid at home and make your last stand or whatever to your home crowd, here's your chance. So it'll be interesting to see how Ole Miss does, but the future right now for Ole Miss is just a whole different scenario that we're going to go down and probably talk about at the end of this show. For Texas A&M, game they should go in, game they should win, game that I would expect them to win because they got Alabama next.
Yeah, and like we've already kind of discussed, everyone's going to need to show up for that Alabama game at College Station.
Everyone. That should be the rowdiest crowd that you see all season in Texas A&M. So that should be your goal. If you're the 12th man, I guess in basketball, the 6th man, you need to be loud, proud, and everything else, and pack out Reed, and make things have the Reed Rowdies. So make it happen, Texas A&M fans. You got a really, really good chance to put some hope on this. If you can just get Auburn to win a basketball game. That's a sad ask, isn't it? Is just asking Auburn to win. That's
a rough ask this time around.
Oh, we'll get to them in a little bit. Well, all right. So we need to talk about Arkansas, who has some big opportunities in this week to help their tournament situation. They kind of, they keep playing better basketball, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like, man, they just cannot win on like a regular, consistent basis. It feels like at times it's like a roller coaster. You win 2, you lose 1, like it's,
yeah. I mean, they
crazy.
Had a great week, even though it ended with the loss to Bama. We saw a much better Road Hogs team than we have seen
in a while.
The rest of the season. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I think that was their best performance on the road, and it's just unfortunate they just couldn't get the win. So they have another chance against Tennessee. They got a chance against Kentucky this weekend. So we brought on John Nabors of 103.7 The Buzz, and here's our conversation with him. And we welcome into the show John Nabors of 103.7 The Buzz and the Locked On Razorback podcast. How are you doing today, John?
I'm doing awesome, actually. How about yourself?
Oh, doing pretty good. I won't talk about baseball on this show like we were just a second ago, but other than that, great. But yeah, so we've got a huge week for the Razorbacks coming up with Tennessee and Knoxville, and then of course the game that never disappoints is when Kentucky comes to Bud Walton Arena for the Hogs. Let's talk a little bit about that Tennessee game first, and just your kind of first thoughts. I personally like the way the Razorbacks match up in this game, and also the current trend that Tennessee seems to be on. What are your first initial thoughts on that game?
Kind of feel the same way. I know that Arkansas has actually not won at Tennessee since Muss has been the coach, which is one of the few places that he has not won at in the SEC. Haven't had a whole lot of opportunities, but last year they went on the road. They ended up losing, I think it was by 4 points. And we know Tennessee was a real good team, and Arkansas was a good team too. But this year, it's kind of like where it may be perfectly timed for Arkansas, where they're starting to play some of their best basketball, and Tennessee has really been struggling, and which is so weird to say, because I was looking at their schedule earlier today, and just looking at the past, 8 games or so. And it's crazy that they have won 4 games in their past 10. And it was against the number 10 Texas team, Auburn, who was at the time top 25, and then Alabama, who we know is one of the best teams in the country, and then South Carolina they smoked. But then they lost to Florida, Vanderbilt, Missouri, Kentucky, and Texas A&M. So it's just been kind of weird for them to be a team where they've beaten some good teams, but then they've lost to some teams that they probably should have beaten or that they're better than, and they've lost a lot of them over the past few games. So I just think that right now Arkansas is playing their best. I think Tennessee has been struggling, and I think them beating South Carolina like they did is not going to exactly, get them ready for this type of matchup. But yeah, I think they match up well. I think Arkansas has plenty of offense going right now. They have the confidence to go along with it, and I don't believe in moral victories, but coming off of that Alabama game, they did do a pretty good job, especially staying with it and staying tough and trying to finish the game off. So I'm pretty optimistic about this game and thinking that Arkansas can go on the road and win.
Absolutely. I agree with you on the end of that Arkansas game. It was definitely one that you sensed a little bit more positivity when you go on the road and play the number 2 team in the country that tight, and especially the way they closed that game up right at the end. They could have just folded at the end of that ball game. So I definitely think it's a good sign. Kind of, I guess, actually, can you talk about that a little bit? Like, do you see a shift in the way that the team's working, chemistry wise, with Nick Smith back on the floor and how it looks differently? Because I thought it really showed the way they finished that game to make it competitive there in the last few minutes against Alabama.
I mean, it goes back to just the talent level of Nick Smith. I think that just because of his elite level that he is, and not only is it something he's been told, but the team believes it, knows, everyone knows how good he is. And so when you had a game like Arkansas had against Alabama, it was always this thing beforehand where you never knew who was going to be the guy. You never knew who was going to be the guy that took the shots or to take over a game, because they've never had that this year on this team. Last year they had JD Note. The year before they had Moses Moody. Like year before that, they had Mason Jones. They had guys that could just take over the game. And as long as Nick Smith's been gone, that's not a role anybody has ever figured out. So anytime Arkansas got down or it started going not too well for them, it just kind of stayed that way. They were never able to really bounce back many times because they just didn't have that guy. So now that they do, it's just a renewed confidence to where the team's like, okay, well, hey, we're down, but even though we're down, we still got Nick Smith. We still got a guy that can hit a 3 at any point in time. He can get to the foul line any point in time. He can get any shot he wants at any point in time. And because of that fact, I feel like other teams know it. They have to defend against it. They have to be ready for it. So just as I've said many times before, his presence alone has been changing the entire team and the entire complexity of it all, where it's not a hindrance of the chemistry. It's not even something that hasn't done anything to the chemistry. If anything, it's extremely helpful and beneficial to it because it's opening up other guys and they can play a little bit more loose out there too.
Yeah, I like to take on that a lot. That makes perfect sense to me. Maddie, did you want to ask a quick question about the last couple of games for the Razorbacks?
Yeah, so going into that Alabama game, I honestly had a lot of confidence that the Hogs were going to win that one, just based on everything that's been going on and the way that they played against South Carolina. So with that game and the way that Arkansas played, I guess this question's more geared toward Tennessee. We're a threat inside now, or like we have been, and now we're a threat on the outside as well. Tennessee's kind of lost that 3-point threat. So how do you think Muss is going to cater to that in this game?
Well, even though that the 3-point shooting has gotten better for Arkansas, I still don't think it's going to be something that Muss really wants to put a whole lot of an emphasis on anyways, because if you think about it, Arkansas only took 10 threes against Bama and made 5. Yeah. They took only 10 against Florida and made 2, but they don't take a lot of threes. Now they did against Georgia. I think they ended up going 11 of 20, but Nick Smith was 8 of those shots. So they're just not shooting threes as much as what they used to, which is fine because they're not a great 3-point shooting team. But because of the threat of it, though, I think that that's also what can open you up on the inside too, especially offensively with a guy like Jalen Graham, who I know that he didn't exactly have a huge presence against Alabama, but because of his post moves and his way of getting better at rebounding and playing defense, he's gotten more opportunities. And so if you're having Nick Smith on the outside, and we know that Devo has kind of asserted himself as being a better 3-point threat, and even Council, he's not a great 3-point shooter, but he can hit them. Kind of same with Anthony Black. Like, you got guys out there that are capable, that aren't afraid to shoot and can make them. But I just think that opens up guys like Jalen Graham, guys like the Mitchell twins to go inside and also do a lot of driving in, which Arkansas kind of has always been their thing of just trying to drive in, get to the foul line, try to, draw some contact there too. So it opens up everything in the inside, even though Arkansas is, again, better at shooting threes, still not technically their game. And I think that they're going to continue to try to pound inside, try to get the ball more to get Graham, maybe the Mitchell twins, and also try to get Council and Nick Smith to drive in a lot more, and Anthony Black, and try to get to the foul line.
Well, I think it definitely helps when you're talking about, supplementing the fact that Tennessee hits probably close. I think they're close to almost 8 3-point field goals made per game, where Arkansas in the past has averaged nearly like 1.5. Getting closer to that 2 line definitely makes it a little bit easier for you to make up those points when you're shooting such a well percentage. But one of the things that I've also circled of note in this game is the fact, and we've talked about it a couple of times throughout the season, Tennessee does a really poor job of getting to the free throw line. They're in the bottom half of the SEC, but for Arkansas, they're one of the most fouled teams or they commit the most fouls one of the most fouls in the SEC. Who do you think ultimately ends up winning that battle in TBA on Tuesday? Was it Tuesday or Wednesday night this week? I forget, but yeah.
Yeah, it's Tuesday. And honestly, that's the ultimate question with Arkansas. And like, the free throw shooting has been extremely frustrating at times. Against Bama, they went 20 of 29, but it was the 4 or 5 misses and where they had them that was like horrible. Like, you just can't have them in the position that they're at. We've seen a couple of games where Arkansas has hit almost every free throw. I mean, like they've had really good performances there. I'm trying to remember which game specifically it was. But they went 21 of 23. It may have been the LSU game at home, but something like that. But then you had games where they go on the road and completely and totally go under 50%. It just is so inconsistent. You don't really know who's going to win it. I think it just depends on who's shooting it. And I think, again, going back to Nick Smith, he's a good free throw shooter. So I think if you get him to the line and Council to the line, those are without a doubt your best free throw shooters as far as the guys on the court. Jalen Graham is the worst, so you need to make sure that he doesn't shoot as many free throws as possible. And the Mitchell twins have had their struggles. Even Anthony Black, Jordan Walsh, they're not great. So it's about who's taking the free throws more so than just the overall free throw percentage. If it's mainly Nick Smith and Ricky Council, I like Arkansas's chances. But if it's down low and it's the Mitchell twins, or if it's Graham and whatnot, then I definitely don't like Arkansas's chances, especially being on the road against Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I was more going also, though, for the fact that Tennessee struggles to even get to the line in the first place. Arkansas is a team that happens to put teams on a lot. Do you think this team has grown up enough, though, over the course of conference play to make sure they're not going to allow Tennessee to, get their free throw attempts more than what we're used to seeing them get to?
I think so. I mean, that's, again, we're talking about things that Arkansas has really gotten better at. And if you just compare the amount of fouls that were called against Arkansas in the first half of the conference slate, it's pretty night and day to what it is now. And I'm not saying they don't commit any fouls, because they do, but I think that because of Arkansas's game and their aggressiveness defensively, and them wanting to establish themselves, sometimes it's hurt them. Sometimes it's really been a problem for them, and allowing that to happen. So I think it's a benefit, but it's also something I'm sure that Rick Barnes, who's a really good coach at Tennessee, he's good at understanding weaknesses of teams. And, Arkansas still, even though they've gotten better at it, they still do foul a lot. They still do commit some lackluster turnovers that are, something that should never happen. They're still not a great 3-point shooting team. So I think all those things is that he's going to try to exploit. And I think he's probably going to try to get to the foul line a little bit more, because that perimeter defense for Arkansas has been really good. I think it was really good against Bama. And I think their inside presence defense is really good. But if you get that inside presence in foul trouble, if you get Anthony Black in foul trouble, one of those guys that's needed to get in early foul trouble, we see that makes a huge difference in the team. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if Rick Barnes tries to play that game a little bit more, even though they're not very good at it.
Again, perfectly understandable. Let's move on to the game that, God, I wish I could be there on Saturday this time around. Unfortunately, I'm going to be on the complete other side of the state. Yay, fun with that. But yeah, Kentucky versus Arkansas. I just had my own moment of depression there. I had to realize I'm going to miss an Arkansas and Kentucky game. It just hurts my heart. So we obviously last time had you on the show to give us a little bit of preview on that Arkansas game in Rupp. this time coming into Bud Walton, Kentucky looks like they're in a much, much, much better place than where they were in that first round. It looked like the get right game of the century for Arkansas in Rupp. And then I guess Kentucky just happened to get right too at the end of that because they got much, much hotter out of that point. What are you kind of expecting Kentucky to be like when they actually get to Bud Walton for this game?
Well, I mean, Kentucky's really good, and I think that they are a better team than what Arkansas saw back when they first played. But I think it's the same thing about Arkansas. I think both teams are better right now than what they were when they first faced off. What happened to Kentucky in that game is Arkansas just shot lights out. They were so good defensively or offensively, which I think was almost shocking to Kentucky at the time because Arkansas had been so poor offensively for so long in the way that they were shooting the ball and getting everybody involved. It was something that I don't think they were ready for, and I don't think that they were able to handle. And they were kind of down in the dumps a little bit, because they were able to peel off a few SEC wins, but they lost to Kansas, and they really didn't have any quality wins as of late. And then at home, once they got down, it just didn't seem like they were all in it, like their heart was in it. And it showed kind of up again the next week when they lost to Georgia on the road, which Georgia is a pretty awful team. But since that point, beat Mississippi State, beat Tennessee, and beat Auburn. They also beat Florida, but 3 of those teams are NCAA tournament teams, and they've looked pretty good doing it. So they're going to be strong. They got a tough game against Vanderbilt at home upcoming this week. So, you never know with the Commodores. But as far as going to Arkansas, though, it kind of goes back to the same thing with Tennessee. I like the matchup. I think Arkansas matches up well. I think as long as you just keep Sheboy in check, which I think Arkansas can do, it's pretty much like Kentucky's a good 3-point shooting team. But if you do that to where you just keep Sheboy from getting his, which I trust Muss will have a plan for that, and then you just have your guards stay out of foul trouble and guard the perimeter, force everything to try to come inside, I think that's the game plan. I think that that's kind of the thing that can really hurt Kentucky. Arkansas's got to bring it offensively too, but I look at it as too as Arkansas. I just feel like they're going to score 80 points in every SEC game. I really do going forward because they've done that the past 3 games with Nick Smith being involved, and I think they're going to continue to do that. So as long as the defense is there for Arkansas, I think they'll beat Kentucky at home.
Well, I think they've been pretty effective from field goal range at home because part of the thing they've done is get 2 feet away from the basket to put the ball up. And when you've got guys as much size as Arkansas does, that's very, very effective. Can I ask a little bit what's your impression of maybe why we're not seeing more of Jalen Graham like we did? Saturday, it seemed like Jalen Graham was in the first half, then he went MIA and then came back late once the couple of Mitchell twins got into foul trouble. Do you expect to see more of Jalen Graham in that matchup against Kentucky? Because getting to the paint and getting close to that rim is going to help the Hogs a lot to get shoot back over 50% again in this game.
I mean, I think that it's possible, but at the same time, though, the one thing that has gone against Jalen Graham is that he's just not as good at defense and rebounding as the Mitchell twins are. He's got the great offensive game. I mean, his offensive game speaks for itself, but his defense just isn't there. And against Kentucky, when you're going up against Sheboy, I don't think that Jalen Graham's going to play very much. Now, if he does, maybe in some foul trouble, maybe find some things going. But I just believe that if you're Arkansas, you're just like, hey, let's just lock him down defensively. We'll get the offense from other places. We'll get the offense from Nick Smith, from Council, from Devo, from Black, from whoever. We get the offense there, but we just need to make sure that we're focusing on not allowing him to get any easy buckets down low. And that's been the thing about Graham is I love Graham and his offensive game. I really do. But when it comes to defense, and especially going somebody like Oscar Sheboy, I'd rather have the Mitchell twins in there as much as possible because I feel like that defensively they'll be able to hold their own a little bit better.
Yeah, definitely so. Maddie?
Yep. I think for this game, just looking at the way that Arkansas played, going back to it against Alabama on Saturday, I think the mid-range shot's going to be their best friend again based on, what we've seen from Kentucky defensively. I feel like they get broken down in the mid-range. So do you think we see a lot of production then from Devo? Ricky Council's been amazing in the mid-range as well. Maybe them drawing out Nick Smith or drawing out the defense with Nick Smith to get a pass on the inside.
I think so. I mean, because again, I was looking back at the box score, and it's the first time that these two teams played, and Arkansas only shot 9 threes. They shot 9 and hit 4 of them. So all of their inside game was there, but the mid-range was important. Devo's best game is his mid-range. I've still always felt that. And I even think that about Council. Like, they can get to the hole. They can go to the rim. And they can make threes on occasion. But when you're talking about just right there, about 5 feet inside of the 3-point line and pretty much anywhere on the court, Devo and Ricky are really good at that. And so when you add that into the game, then it opens up other places too. So if you can just, I know it's always what every team wants to do, but if you can just have that nice 3-point game and then also have that inside game where if they're trying to focus on those, it opens up that mid-range game, then, they're not going to really have an answer for you. And especially if you get like Sheboy in foul trouble somehow, like if it's driving it or if it's just, trying to go up against them a little bit, then they'll really be handicapped and trying not to, have somebody else go in there that's not Oscar Sheboy, which could really, really start to open up the inside. So, yeah, I think the mid-range game is something they don't utilize enough. I still think it's a bigger strength for Arkansas, for Council and Devo than maybe what people realize. But like I said, I think that they're just something that Muss has always done is just take what the games have given him. And if they find an opening there, they're just going to try to keep after it, keep going at it until they can't stop it anymore.
So let's touch a little bit on one of the things we have seen Kentucky get hot on. We have talked about the 3-point defense. If you're sticking Devo on somebody for this game, who are you putting him on if you're Muss in this one?
Well, man, yeah, that's tough because, Kentucky obviously, like, they have a lot of pieces that can be good. They've had guys that have struggled, but man, I really like how Devo's defense has really stepped up in that they basically give him the guards that can do the most damage. So I would say Reeves. I would think that's who they'd put him on. But Jacob Toppin, I know Kentucky fans get frustrated by him, but he's proven himself that he can score too. So Wallace is really good. Cason Wallace. I mean, he was a guy that's been really good too. So I mean, it may be by a committee thing, but I'm sure that they'll probably try to throw him out there first against somebody like Wallace or Reeves, and just try to lock them down and see how that goes. And if you do that, then I guess after that, probably Anthony Black would be your next best defender against the guard at that point too. So yeah, I want to see Devo. I'd say Cason. If I had my vote though, I'd say Cason because I feel like what he did against Arkansas was really good last time, and you don't want to have that happen again this time.
Oh, fair enough. I think that's going to be an interesting matchup to see. If we did happen to see Anthony Black and Cason Wallace on one another, the back and forth the entire game, watching two of the top 10 draft picks going back and forth a little while. I don't know if Wallace will actually go top 10. I'll probably somewhere in the top 15 though. But that would actually be really interesting to look at as well. All right, so just give me a reason here why you think Arkansas might go. And you can tell me honestly if you don't think this is going to happen. Why Arkansas goes 2-0 this week?
Well, I think they go 2-0 because I'm always a glass half full type person when it comes to Arkansas anyways, but I look at it as against Alabama, which I know they lost. There's no moral victories or anything like that. But you went on the road to one of, if not the best team in college basketball, and you had a lead at halftime. You were up and you had a drought, but you even stormed back and fought back and nearly tied the game to send it to overtime. Like you had it all kind of put into place there. You do that and you play that level, even though Arkansas didn't play perfectly, obviously, but if you play that level against almost any other team in the country, you probably win. I mean, and this is on the road you're talking about. So whether it's a neutral court at home, even if you play that way, you win. And I know it's hard to ask for Arkansas to play that way again. And because again, it's different games, different matchups and everything. And going to Tennessee will be a different ball game. But just the way Arkansas offensively has played 3 straight games now, I have full confidence that this isn't just like one game wasn't just a flash in the pan. They're actually putting it together offensively. So I think because of that fact, the reasons Arkansas lost those games earlier in the year is because their offense has improved. They would not be able to close out games when they had big leads late because they didn't have that guy to go to and take over the game. They have that now. And so I think Arkansas is a better team than Tennessee. I think that they go in and win that game. And I think that they beat Kentucky at home. And at that point in time, I think that'll be exactly what people were kind of hoping and expecting for at the end of the season, where you can say, hey, with that tough stretch down in basketball, or at least in the regular season, you were able to win 4 of your last 5, and 2 of those being against bona fide NCAA tournament teams. I think that that's about all you could ask for, and I think that that's probably what's going to happen. I will be actually surprised if Arkansas does not beat Tennessee. That's kind of where my confidence level is at right now.
I mean, that's a pretty high level of confidence right there. Maddie, do you have anything else?
I don't know, John. So Arkansas beats Tennessee. You're going to the Kentucky game, right?
Mhm.
Okay. So are you going to pull Will Ferrell from old school, go like streaking through the quad if we get both wins this week?
I mean, as much as I'd love to do that, I would probably have to wait until something more like a bigger deal happens for that. Because at this point in time, it's like back-to-back Elite Eights. That's already happened. And so winning 2 regular season games won't do it for me. But if they go to the second weekend in the NCAA tournament, maybe even make a Final Four, then that's when the considerations start happening. The excitement can definitely start happening in that regard.
I mean, I'm going to cut this now, and I'm going to make that a soundbite for like our Twitter page or something like that. And we're gonna end up holding you accountable. I'm kidding.
Yeah, holding me to it, because I'm sure people will never remember that and not try to hold that against me at all. So,
yeah, no, I this podcast is small. You can get away without saying anything that you want on this show. So
good to know. Good to know.
Anyway, hey John, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. It's been awesome both times we've had you on the show. And if you want to let everybody know where they can find you, because there's somewhere of our listener who happens to be in the middle of Houston who's an Aggies fan or something like that, just let them know where they can find you at.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on all social media at Buzz John Nabors, and you can listen to my radio show Out of Bounds from 1 to 4 every weekday afternoon on 103.7 The Buzz and 103.7thebuzz.com, and Locked On Razorbacks wherever podcasts are found, as well as on YouTube. So you can check it out there for all things Razorbacks essentially, and it's a daily podcast. So you can check it out that way. And as I said before, if you can't find me, that's a you problem, because I try to be about everywhere as possible. So,
well, thank you again, John. We really did, and thank you for good grief. I'm getting tongue tied. I can't say goodbye this time around, but thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Hey, it's the hardest thing just to say goodbye.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we're just gonna play jokes now. Thank you.
Anytime. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So I want to thank John for coming on the show. And again, sugar is a drug, and it makes you act really, really weird. And that's probably my certain vibe that I'm giving off the podcast today. So I'm going to take a couple of deep breaths and hopefully, work my way through the rest of this show. Maddie, let's talk about Kentucky. First off, as we mentioned in the interview with John, they're playing just better basketball right now.
Yeah, definitely from the beginning of the season, even mid-season, we saw a struggling Kentucky team that might pick up a win here, might pick up a win there, but it looks, like they're on a much better road to the NCAA tournament, and much clearer path than we saw for them earlier this season.
Yeah, they're definitely looking a lot better. You also tend to look a lot better when you decimate teams by nearly 40 points. That definitely helps. Of course, that at the end of that game, it actually came closer to, what was it, 32? And that's because Auburn put up a billion points in garbage time when Cal put the walk-ons in when they were up by more than 40. So yeah, Oscar Tshiebwe, 22 points, 17 rebounds. Antonio Reeves, 18 of his 21 points came in the second half. Kentucky just absolutely put it on Auburn. And so, yeah, Kentucky, you're going to look like a much better team after that. And they're currently sitting third in the SEC. That's wild, isn't it? Like, to think about where this team was
really is
and where they are now.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to be honest, I was really shocked that I don't want to say struggled as much as they did against Florida, but I thought that game was going to be a lot different on the spread. But they still came out ahead, so just add it in the book and move on.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting, right? Because like in January, it looked like Kentucky was going to be our number one underperforming team. It really did, because like they were predicted to win the SEC in the polls, like in the writers' polls. We picked the field. We said, in our first podcast, like, Kentucky's preseason favorite to win the SEC. Who do you got? And we both said, pick teams in the field. Kentucky now is coming closer to those expectations, and it's other teams like Arkansas and, maybe Auburn who have played a little bit lower than what we expected them to. So Kentucky, I mean, you got to give credit to Cal where credit is due. He's got this team playing the best basketball at the right time right now. So, yeah, props to Kentucky.
Yeah, I mean, there were times earlier in the season on this podcast where we talked about Cal's seat getting hot. Now he's the knight in shining armor because he's getting them ready for tournament time.
Wins can make the whole world a whole lot better place. So
For sure.
yeah, that's my take right now with Kentucky. They've got a interesting week though. They wrapped the season up on the season finale with Arkansas, as you heard us talk with John there. And that's going to be a barn burner. And anytime that Kentucky goes to Bud Walton Arena, like I said, I've seen worse Arkansas teams beat better Kentucky teams than this one. In Bud Walton beat Kentucky. So anytime Kentucky steps foot into Bud Walton Arena, as it has been since pretty much the emergence of Arkansas in this conference, that is the one place where Kentucky goes to lose. There and maybe TBA. That doesn't mean that
and at home against Jared Musselman.
It's definitely on the cards every time they play there. Like it's definitely a possibility. That's what I'm trying to get at, and I think Arkansas is going to be a tough opponent, like John said, for Kentucky.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's just one of those situations where Arkansas is trying to get the best seeding as possible. I know Kentucky is too, but they've got Tennessee on Tuesday, and then depending on how that game goes, they might be coming back home to lash out against Kentucky.
Yeah. And you know what? They've got another game that's going to be right in front of them that's going to be tough. And it's the Kings Turd Mountain right now with Vanderbilt. They're playing good basketball. They're just probably not going to make the NCAA tournament without winning the SEC tournament at this point. So they've got to figure out how they're going to get past that team because Leon Robinson's caused them some problems. So that'll be interesting. But that, of course, game is going to be in Rupp Arena. I expect Kentucky to handle Vanderbilt at home. So that's my anticipation. I don't expect Vandy to necessarily put up a road upset. Majority of Vandy's big upsets have actually come in Memorial. And as I've said 1,000 times, I don't know what happens in that building if they pump it full of laughing gas or something like that, but good teams just can't seem to play basketball in that building. And it's really weird. So yeah, I don't know, but I expect Kentucky to beat Vanderbilt, and then we're just going to get a heck of a showdown on Saturday between Kentucky and Arkansas.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, there's been some talk about Wheeler with I think his boot was off on Saturday, maybe. So people are speculating on if he's coming back or not. So, especially if he comes back at Arkansas, be another interesting matchup to add to the puzzle.
Yeah, for sure. So it's going to be an easy week for our next team that we're talking about, which is the Missouri Tigers. Mizzou, first off, they've been up and down, but they wrapped up and they got a pretty convincing win against Georgia. Now they've got some easy games coming up in front of them. We're talking LSU and Ole Miss to finish up the season. Good grief. They put in all this work. They've got a couple of easy ones in front of them. All they have to do is not mess this up. They're going to be in a great spot coming into tournament play first year under Dennis Gates.
Yeah, they had that big win against this climbing Mississippi State team last week. And then, like you said, the win on the road at Georgia. I think, unless something miraculous happens over at Pete Maravich, was the super long name for that stadium.
PMAC.
PMAC, yeah. Unless something miraculous happens there, I see Mizzou getting 2 pretty easy wins.
It is to
close out the season.
It is the Pete Maravich Assembly Center.
Assembly Center. I knew there was another unnecessary word in there.
One of my favorite basketball players, Pete Maravich, but
Oh, one of mine too.
Yeah. Everybody knows the pistol. Everybody knows that Shaq played in that building, baby. I don't know if Shaq actually played in that building, or if he played in the old dusty barn, back in the day.
I don't remember what the movie is called, but there's a movie about Pistol Pete.
In high school, yeah. I know what you're talking about. Yeah. That Christian.
I think it might just be Pistol Pete or the Pistol or something.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
Back in the day, when you actually went to rent movies, I kept that one rented out for a few weeks.
It's a good one, though. It's a good one. Pete's story about being a born again Christian and everything else doesn't exactly come up in that story, but they definitely made a Christian movie about it. It's a good one, though. You know what? There's some good ones out there. A lot of them are bad. I'm not gonna lie. There's a couple that I go, That's poor movie making. Anyway, let's move on to, well, actually, you know what? Before we move on, let's talk about Mizzou real fast because we just kind of got wrapped up in there talking Pistol Pete. For Mizzou, I do want to say this. It is an accomplishment for a first-year coach to go through the gauntlet of the season and being close to dead, or not close to dead, but having people cast severe doubts on you, after that Kansas game, and then bounce back, beat Illinois, play well enough to where you're in the middle of the conference throughout conference play, win the games you're supposed to win, sneak a couple of wins in there along the way. Mizzou, under Dennis Gates, has shown a ton of promise. It's a remarkable accomplishment, and like I said, as long as they don't screw it up, that's where they are, is don't screw it up. Like that's a spot that you expect experienced teams to be in, not a first-year coach at a new program. So hats off to Dennis Gates. I think he's definitely in the top of the conversation for first-year coaches in the SEC.
Yeah, I mean, because if you look at it, the way if things go the way that we think that they're going to go, Missouri ends up ahead of Kentucky and Tennessee in the SEC standings, which is phenomenal for Dennis.
Remarkable.
Great.
Yeah, it's just something that you don't see every day. And, I know he did a good job with the transfer portal, bringing a lot of his guys in from Cleveland State and building that team up. But it's been an accomplishment. It's been an absolute accomplishment. Hats off to Mizzou. Let's talk about Tennessee. Tennessee. I don't know what to think about Tennessee right now, again, because as you said, this team's peaked. And it's pretty obvious because I believe over their last 6 games at this point, they're 500, and that includes a win against South Carolina at home. There's been nothing really great about Tennessee. Sure, they beat Alabama, which was great, but then they followed up with a horrible loss to Kentucky, and then again this week they go 500 again, losing to Texas A&M in College Station. Then they got to come back home and they get an easy one against South Carolina. They just can't see, they don't seem like the same Tennessee team we thought they were at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I agree. After taking that loss to Kentucky and then got back in the win column with South Carolina, it's just underwhelming, I think, is the word to use for their season.
Yep. And we already talked to John about their first game on Tuesday, in which that they'll play the Razorbacks. One that's going to be of great interest, and one that I definitely was not kidding. I think Arkansas can beat Tennessee and TBA.
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
seems like it could happen.
Yeah, we've seen them struggle against solid defensive teams, and the way that Arkansas has grown, especially defensively, learning how to play defense without committing as many fouls. I mean, they still commit a lot, but
yeah.
And then we've seen them struggle from the 3-point line, which was the majority of their offense for the first part of the season. So I think as Tennessee finishes out the year of regular season play, they're going to struggle against Arkansas, and we may even see them struggle against Auburn.
They could struggle at Auburn, especially since they are having to go to Neville to play that game. But I will say the thing that I think is helping them along and hit those 8 made 3-pointers a game is right now Triple J is playing pretty good basketball.
Yep.
He's been missing games from injury. He's missed 4 games, but he's back, and he came back and played extremely well against South Carolina. I do expect him to be able to make some shots for the Vols. We'll see how he plays going down the line, because that could be a big determination on where the Vols are going to be at the end of the season. But and that game that they have coming up in Neville, that could be the final nail in the coffin for Auburn to finally completely fall out of their chances. Let's talk about the bubble a little bit, because there's 2 SEC teams that I feel are on the bubble right now, and that's Mississippi State and Auburn.
Yeah, I think, looking at Mississippi State specifically, we see them match up against South Carolina, which should be an easy win, and then against Vandy. And like we've said, it's one of those with Vanderbilt, you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, you really don't. With Auburn's first game, this week against Alabama, rough. Tennessee after that, rough. I mean, they're in bad shape. For Mississippi State, like I said last week, they had kind of this chance to kind of put themselves in the tournament for sure if they could have beat both, Mizzou and Texas A&M. They came up a little short against Mizzou and Como. Valiant effort, only losing by 2 on the road in a tough place to play. When Como's rocking when they get people in that building. Texas A&M beating Texas A&M at home by 7. That's a great win. That's a great win, and Texas A&M remains in the top 30 in the net, so that's going to remain a Q1 win. So now you got South Carolina and Vanderbilt coming in. Those are going to be 2 games where they don't really help you, but they could hurt you. So winning those 2 games, to me, South Carolina is the interesting one. South Carolina, if you beat South Carolina, that's one that you're taken care of. Just don't lose that game. Vanderbilt is the one that you have a Q2 opportunity. You need to take care of business. You got to beat Vanderbilt on the road because that's a Q2 opportunity, and it's a big resume point. Just putting another one of those staples for Mississippi State's resume.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you look at Mississippi State, they've won 7 of their last 9 games. This win streak could be a huge momentum builder. And I think, if they take that easier win that we're talking about over South Carolina, that could be a big boost to help them close out the season with Vanderbilt with a win.
Yeah, it's definitely the don't screw it up moment in the South Carolina game. You just cannot screw it up. You can't mess up the good work you're doing, but you need to make sure and get that win. That's the more important game of the week. But if you beat Vanderbilt in Nashville, it could change your season. So like that could be that one last resume push to get you off the last 4 in or, last 4 buys and start pushing you closer and closer to a firmly in 11 or possibly a 10 seed. So we'll see where that ends up. So right now I will say that Mississippi State is probably safer than Auburn is at this point in the season.
Yeah, I think so too. I think, just with Auburn's last 2 games on the schedule, those are going to be tough.
Rough. It is rough. Like I said, there was no bottom. And right now they're showing us that there was no bottom, and there's no telling how far Auburn can fall right now. We'll just see. We'll see. It's gonna be entertaining.
Yep, it'll be a good week of basketball for sure. I think, we probably see a couple upsets here and there, and I'm excited for it.
Will we see Auburn in the SEC tournament do what Texas A&M did? Where we were like, we sit there thinking like, oh, Texas A&M, no, you're not going to make the tournament. You got to win the whole thing. You got to win the whole thing. And then they're like, clearly our resume is good enough on Sunday to where we can make it. And then they lose the SEC championship game to Tennessee. What if that happened to Auburn? Like if they got themselves in that scenario, and then Sunday they're just like, well, what do you mean we're not going to the tournament? We did everything right except win the tournament, so
yeah. I don't know. I honestly don't think we see Auburn get that far.
They're just not hot enough. I don't think they're hot enough to do that. That would be very surprising.
Well, I don't want to say it because, as soon as I do say it, something's going to happen. Auburn has struggled on the road. And I think having every team on a neutral site isn't going to do anything for them.
It would be rough. It would definitely be a rough path to get down. All right, let's talk about everyone else. And then this week in the everyone else segment, I am returning my conversation back to Ole Miss. The land of Oxford, Mississippi, has made a wise decision in firing Kermit the Frog Davis. It's wise choices there. Now they have to replace the guy. And there's 2 names floating around there in which I took away in my heart 2 points. When Ole Miss fans said that they want Will Wade and Chris Beard to be one of their next head coach at Ole Miss. And my 2 points that I took away are that Ole Miss fans, you have terrible taste in basketball coaches. That's the first point. But number 2, and this is the more important point, and regardless of my opinion, your heart's in the right place. You just want a better basketball program. So there's a couple in there's actually one guy that I really think that Ole Miss should go for, and that's Dusty May. I like Dusty May at Florida Atlantic quite a bit. He's gonna make it to run in the tournament. I'm telling you, he'll probably be a Sweet 16 that'll probably be a Sweet 16 team, especially he's probably going to end up somewhere in the 8, 9, 10, range there. And so I would be pretty cool seeing, FAU make Sweet 16. Get your coach right there. He built that program. They did a great job building that thing up. Like him a lot. He's got a winning record, and he's got a good track record of building that FAU program. And for Ole Miss, that's a program that needs to be built. You got someone with some resume that shows that they can build. So I like it. I like that as a choice a lot for the Rebels.
Yeah, I think so too. I'd seen you tweet out earlier this week those two possibilities.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think Dusty May definitely the best choice out of the ones I've seen kind of floating around. I did see some people make some comments about, hey, what Will Wade did is now legal as long as the SEC
It
takes
wasn't
away the
then.
sanctions.
Yeah.
But I still think he's I can't talk. I still think he's a scumbag, so he shouldn't coach anywhere.
I mean, cheating's cheating. I'm sorry, it is. So you got a legal question with Chris Beard about exactly what went down. There's some, sketchy evidence. You want to make sure that, he's clean before he gets hired anywhere, and him going right back to a power 7, power 6 program. It's kind of weird seeing that one. I expected to see him in a mid-major for his next job, and I expected him to sit out a year before his name started floating around. But you know what? It's going to float around for a while until he chooses his next job. And then for Will Wade, yeesh. Like I said, I know the point is that, what Will Wade did is legal now. It wasn't then. That's the thing. Back again, legality versus morality, as we discussed earlier in this show.
Yeah.
I don't care that it's legal now. He shouldn't have been doing it in the first place. Will Wade's gross to me.
I feel like we need to see, I don't know if you ever watched the movie, but for some reason it just came to the forefront of my mind. Rebound with Martin Lawrence.
Yeah.
Where he goes and coaches a terrible middle school junior high team. That needs to be Will Wade and Chris Beard's path.
First off, Chris Beard's not allowed that, but Will Wade, yeah, totally would allow that. I would enjoy watching him coach a middle school basketball team. That's the things that I did. I coached 6th grade ball. I'd love to watch Will Wade do that, because those kids don't pay attention, man. I'm telling you,
no.
they want to shoot. They want to go do anything else, and other times, and you got this one kid who'll listen to you, but he's not quite getting the point, and he's probably not the most talented kid on the team. You're like, just listen to what I'm saying. It's have fun with middle schoolers. I would thoroughly enjoy watching that sitcom with Will Wade coaching middle school basketball, and then getting them all I don't know, iPads or something like that in the process. Getting the best 6th graders on his basketball team. It's like, hey kid, you want a PS5?
I can make things happen for you. I can make things happen for me.
Yeah, again, I don't like hiring sketchy coaches. It's not something I would do if I was Ole Miss. But right now, given the PR environment in the SEC, that would probably be the lowest.
Right. It's if we do it now, we're probably
so
safe.
The rest of everything else that's going on, people might forget, in a week that Ole Miss hired Will Wade, except LSU fans who'd be over there we just fired this guy, But I think there's better alternatives. I just do. I think you go find somebody in the mid-majors. You can go find NBA and assistant basketball coach maybe who might be interested. I can't think of any names at the top of my head, but that's always a distinct possibility. That's someone, Eric Musselman went from the NBA, became a college basketball assistant, and then worked his way through the process, So, that's where you maybe go look, is that you go to those mid-major programs and you find who's going to be, got the best resume and has got the really good chance. Like I said, Dusty May to me seems like, he's not seen said enough on a list. Yep. And I like Dusty May a lot for a potential coach. Heard his interview on the Jim Rohn show the other day. He fell in love with Boca Raton. How can you not, for where you want to coach? But, one way to get people away from money, as Ole Miss fans know, to get them out of Boca, is a big paycheck and say, hey, we want to win. And, another coach did that. Another coach left from Boca Raton for Oxford, Mississippi. and he seems to be doing okay right now.
Yeah, he's fine.
You can say what you want about him, but then they might try again. Then maybe you might take that athletic director because clearly he knows how to hire coaches. But that's a story for a different time. So anyway, like that choice. There's going to be, I don't know if there's anybody else is going to be on the hot seat at the end of this season. I saw a really dumb article saying that Nate Oates and Eric Musselman were on the hot seat. I was like, that's the dumbest take I have ever heard. Saw that article and I was baffled.
Yeah. I mean, sure, Eric Musselman didn't perform as well as we, thought it was going to at the beginning, but we also had several unforeseen injuries.
He also has back-to-back Elite Eights. This man could not make the tournament this year and wouldn't be on the hot seat.
Yeah, he's fine.
He's totally
fine. But Nate Oates, again, the only question there is what's happening right now, and
it's got nothing.
I think that they've made it obvious
where they stand. Matter. Yeah, Alabama looks to be going nowhere down that track. So, like I said, that was the dumbest article I'd ever laid eyes upon. Especially read the headline, I was like, just like, what are you doing?
The fire started building.
I was like, this is
inside you.
Yep.
Why are these people so stupid?
Yeah, but I don't know if there's anybody else right now, though, that, down the road, we're going to see another hot seat coach because, Jerry Stackhouse, at the beginning of the season, there might have been an argument. A lot of the other coaches, really young and new in their programs.
Yeah, White's doing amazing at Georgia. Todd Golden, they, aren't producing as much as we kind of thought that they would be, but again, new coach, Todd Golden's best players out now. He'll be all right.
Yeah, it's one of those, be a little patient. Todd Golden's a good basketball coach. You give it time. He's going to build something there. There's other good coaches. Like, again, Dennis Gates might be the best first-year coach.
For sure.
For sure. But, as far as like what happened this year, Todd Golden might be the best hire out of the class of these new coaches. So, and that's going to be the scary thing is because Florida's got a tradition of winning. Like I said, I think they're probably about historically the third best program in the SEC. Mm-hmm. And there's certainly an argument for the second for number of championships. That's pretty much the only reason they have an argument for second, but they are definitely in the top three as far as the SEC goes. Florida's very good. So we will definitely pay attention to those first year coaches, but there's no one really I can think of on the actual hot seat in the SEC. I think it's going to be at this point, it'll be next year. We'll be talking about Bruce Pearl if Auburn does not make the championship this year, but we'll see, or not make the championship. It doesn't make the NCAA tournament this year. If that were to happen, there will be a conversation about Bruce Pearl coming into next season. But I think for the most part, we're pretty much done with the coaches carousel in the SEC, unless somebody gets pulled to a different program.
Yeah, I think, for the Bruce Pearl conversation, won the SEC title last year. I don't think. Yeah, I think it'll be at least 2 to 3 more years of bad seasons that he'd be on the hot seat.
Yeah, definitely. So there'll be some patience. It'll probably be about 2 to 3 years away. It's just going to be about waiting where the storyline ends up. So the storyline can always go bad. Make the NIT, lose in the first round of the NIT. People are going to get a real sour taste in their mouth. We'll see what happens next after that. But yeah, here nor there. All right, a lot of basketball coming up this week. It's been an interesting one. I've had a rough time navigating the show with the amount of sugar in my veins that I have today, but nonetheless, I do have a show to edit today, and I hope everybody out there enjoys the basketball.
Yeah, have a great week. Get ready for a little bit of madness. Yeah. We're getting there.
Madness is coming, folks. The madness is coming. By the way,
not from David on his sugar high.
Not from David on his sugar high, but we do have a couple quick housekeeping things I do need to mention. First off, this will be the last show that's coming out on Monday until after the SEC tournament, which that Monday will be following the SEC tournament will be our first selection show. We'll have some NCAA tournament coverage on the pod, but next week, the show is going to be coming out on late Monday, early Tuesday, and that's just to give us some space for the SEC tournament, and also, we're just not going to have any games on Tuesday. So, it's all going to be about Wednesday night sadness in the SEC tournament when we get to that point. And then the second thing is there are some great podcasts with college baseball and baseball season, professional baseball season on the horizon. We've got some really, really good ones. So go over to VSN Baseball and check it out because we've got college baseball shows. We've got professional baseball shows, ton of good stuff for you guys to be listening to if you're into baseball. I know we got some SEC baseball fans who listen on here. So go check out those shows. Find one that you love and it'll be really cool to check out.
Yep. I need my Red Sox to do better this year, so I need to go check out the
not all of us can be,
Nope.
like world champions. I'm just saying.
Without cheating.
Where's the cheating this year? Where's the cheating this year?
Okay, I'll give you that.
Where's the cheating that you do? I have seen no cheating. There have been no cheating that has occurred.
You didn't see it? Did anyone hear it? The trash cans ringing.
I know that you're afraid. It feels like every day things are slipping away. You're slipping away, and you think back to a time that you were lost. Thoughts disorganized.